Welcome to Session 2, Part 3 of the Corbin Dialogues, which is part of the Skills for Life course. In this part, we're going to talk about business meetings, good and bad bosses, bad leadership, and how people react in a group where they have little or no respect for a leader, and how you can adjust your thinking about how you participate in meetings and make sure your voice gets heard and you're able to add a valuable contribution. If you think about it, an interview is a kind of group meeting where you are expected to answer questions and to some extent influence the people who are interviewing you so that they evaluate you in a positive and favourable way. That kind of meeting where what you say is important and influences the outcome is entirely different to all the other meetings you've been to during your education. In school, you were passive. The teacher told you what you had to learn. In university, to some extent, it was less passive, but very often the lecturer or the professor is standing at the front of a room telling you a load of stuff and pushing information at you and then telling you stuff you've got to read and tests you've got to take. And there's pretty well nothing you can do about how the meeting goes or the subject. You are passive again. In fact, in a way, you're almost a slave to what they've decided you need to do. Now, business meetings are entirely different. The business needs you to make a contribution. That's why they pay you rather than you pay them. They want to know what you think. They want you to add value. And it's important at this stage of your life to start thinking, how am I going to get people to listen to me? How am I going to add value? What skills can I develop? What knowledge can I gain so that my presence in a meeting is valued? And then how should I behave in that meeting? How do I make sure that I fit in with all the other people in the room who also want to make a contribution? And what about the style of the leader who should be providing the group an opportunity or influencing the group in a positive way, but may not be? And a lot of this particular section is talking about how people cope with that situation where there is a bad leader and they tend to play a game called bullshit bingo. Now, I apologise in advance for using that word, but it's associated with bad leadership. I've not come across a better word that expresses the displeasure that people feel when they are not well led, and their frustrations and what they do about it.
Okay, so the topic is bullshit bingo that I suggested you look at because it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's popular in business for people who might otherwise get a little bit bored in meetings.
Popular. There was a lot on it.
Because when you work for companies, especially, you've got a job and you have to go to meetings.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to, but you do have to. You know, managers of departments justify their existence by having meetings. It's a great way to avoid doing anything or making decisions. Not always, that's cynical, but sometimes it's necessary to have meetings for them to be inclusive and for people to feel they own the decision that was made. That, again, a good manager who already knows what they're going to do will have a meeting, supposedly to discuss it and to discuss options, and they'll just steer everybody so that they all buy in. And that way they make what appears to be a joint decision, and therefore they feel they own and are committed to expediting those actions that come out of the decision. Okay, so
well-managed meetings are important to build a team, keep staff up to date, listen to opinions, and get agreed ownership of each and every action that is planned. The game of bullshit bingo only happens when the boss is telling and pushing and the staff are too insecure to input in a constructive way.
But anyway, that's why so many meetings happen. They're very often not really about the subject that the meeting is supposedly about. And then sometimes people have meetings because it's expected every morning from 9:30 to 10, or some nasty managers start on a Monday morning at 8 o'clock with a sort of 8 through 8:30 is the team meeting. And that gets everybody out of bed at 6 or 6:30 or 7 so they can get to the blooming 8 o'clock meeting. They don't want to be there. So they agreed between themselves to play off the manager and play this thing called bullshit bingo, which is they, as below the manager, they regard most of what's going on in this meeting and what the manager is saying as bullshit. I don't have a polite word for bullshit, but that's just what it's called.
Yeah.
Okay. Which I suppose you could paraphrase as it's rubbish or it's meaningless.
Yeah.
It's words that people say in business, but they don't have any proper meaning. So they're classified as bullshit. Okay. So what was your perception of how you set up? Well, tell me anything you saw and thought about bullshit bingo.
It appears that people make personalised cards for their bosses or whoever it is with words that they commonly say or might come up in a meeting.
Okay.
And then 5 people, say however many people, make a card with their words on, and like 5 in a row or 3 in a row or whatever it is means you win. And then you have to shout out bullshit as loud as you can in a meeting. and then that's like the equivalent of saying bingo. And then you win.
Okay. And that was... You saw it covered quite a lot on YouTube. Was it YouTube you looked at mostly?
I just Googled it.
Yeah.
But there were
a lot of hits.
A lot of hits, yeah. I only went through like 4 or 5, but there were...
Did you look at any YouTube sessions for it?
I didn't look at any YouTube sessions for it. I did look at other people's cards that they had made for it, and like review websites. It's weird. They had like what people thought of the game, but I didn't watch any videos of people actually playing it or anything like that.
Okay. Why do you think I asked you to look at it?
I don't know. Well, I do know. Because it highlights the fact that people aren't, in meetings, say, people aren't there just to give you important information. It's often just people power playing their position in the company. So, for like you said, the person running the meeting feels like they need to demonstrate the fact that they're in power.
As you said.
What did I say?
Like you said.
As you said.
Yeah.
The person at the head of the meeting needs to demonstrate that they're in power. So they're going to host an 8 o'clock meeting to be like, get out of bed, bitch. This is...
Yes.
Yeah. So I imagine that's why you that feels like why you showed it to me, just to demonstrate that people play games to...
Okay. There's one point I want to pick up on just there. Because I asked you the question, why do you think I asked you to? Okay. And you just answered, it was a good answer, it was great, that you brought in the word feel. I feel like. Okay?
Okay, yeah.
And
didn't even notice that I did.
No, you wouldn't. But you will in future, because I shall be covering a thing called laser questioning. Okay? And it's think and feel is an important part of laser questioning and laser answering. Okay.
This course is to help you prepare for the adult world once you leave school and university. And some of the subjects may seem a bit obscure to you, like agenda and bullshit bingo and so on, but they are the reality of what goes on in the world of work. And if you think you can ignore that and just transition straight from a university environment into a work environment, you're going to get a pretty rude shock. It could start in the interview that you go to. They may misjudge you because you are not adequately able to communicate, to observe the people you're talking to have done the necessary research that is essential to your success. So I make no apologies. I do apologize for too much use of bullshit as a word, and I'm sorry if that's caused any offence. But emotions are strong in business sometimes. People care about being heard. People care about being walked on in meetings. So all I would say is start getting used to these ideas. Start being thoughtful about the words that you use, because if you prepare adequately, you are going to have a much, much happier adult life. You will pass that interview, you will go into that job, and you will know from the get-go what is going on. And that's what the IPL is all about, because we have hundreds of years of training experience between us, with probably 20 of the biggest multinational corporations in the world asking us to come in and fix the people that they've recruited because they're just not effective enough in the world of work. And we believe that you should have access to that kind of information, that kind of training, and it shouldn't just be a random chance. We think universities should do a great deal more in this area, but unfortunately our observation is they don't do enough. There are excellent sites that you can go to, but it's going to be up to you, and we want to help you in the best possible way. We are going to share with you the sort of information you would get if you went to a top-class management training organisation. And it is our passion, and we very much want you to succeed and have a happy life.